The Zephyrian ships moved slowly through the dark space between stars. Their once beautiful vessels looked sick and dying. The bioships that had grown from living coral and bone were turning gray and brittle. Cracks ran along their hulls like scars. Inside these dying ships, 2 million survivors huddled together in the dim light of failing power cells. Ambassador Kethara pressed her webbed hand against the viewing port of the lead ship. Her people had once ruled 3 star systems filled with deep oceans and floating cities. Now they had nothing but these broken ships and the clothes on their backs. The synthetic plague had killed everything else. She remembered the day it started. The hegemony of suns had sent their ultimatum first. Submit to their rule or face the consequences. The Zephyrian Council had refused. They were a proud people who had never bowed to anyone. 3 days later, the plague ships arrived. The disease was made in a laboratory. It turned their beautiful oceans into poison. The water that gave them life became their death. Billions died in the first week. The lucky ones died quickly. Others suffered for days as their gills burned and their skin cracked. Kethara had watched her home city die from orbit. The great coral towers that had taken centuries to grow fell apart in hours. The singing pools where children learned to hunt went silent forever. Even now, months later, she could still hear the screams carried through the water. The hegemony had made sure no one would help them. They sent messages to every known civilization. The Zephyrians were contaminated, they said. Any species that helped them would face the same fate. Most alien races had believed the lies or were too scared to care about the truth. But humans were different. The first human ship that found them was a cargo vessel called the Betty May. Captain Jim Rodriguez had been running supplies to the outer colonies when his sensors picked up the Zephyrian distress signals. He could have ignored them. His cargo was worth millions, and he had a schedule to keep. Instead, he spent 3 days transferring food and medical supplies to the dying refugee fleet. Why? Kethara had asked him through the translation device. You don't even know us. Rodriguez had looked at her through the video link. His brown eyes were kind, but sad. Because you're people, he said simply. People. Help people. That had been Rodriguez's message to Earth Command, too. People help people. Within a week, the United Nations Emergency Council called for an emergency session. They wanted to hear the Zephyrian story directly. Now Kethara stood in Luna Station, humanity's great spaceport orbiting Earth's moon. She had never seen anything like it. The station was huge, with spinning sections that created artificial gravity. Ships from dozens of worlds docked at its many ports, but what amazed her most was how different it all was. The hegemony built everything the same way. Gray metal, sharp angles, cold efficiency. Human space was chaos and color. Ships painted in bright blues and reds. Advertisements for restaurants and shops covered the walls. Children ran through the corridors while their parents shouted after them. It was messy and loud and alive. The council chamber was packed. Representatives from every human world had come to hear her speak. Some joined by video link from colonies so far away that the signal took hours to reach them. Kethara had spoken to many governments before. Usually, they were bored or impatient. These humans leaned forward in their seats. They asked questions and took notes. They cared. Secretary General Maria Santos called for order. She was an older woman, with gray hair and steady hands. Her voice was calm but strong. Ambassador Kethara, please tell us, what happened to your people? Kethara activated her translation device and began to speak. She told them about the plague ships and the poisoned oceans. She showed them recordings of the dying cities and the empty worlds. Some of the humans looked away. Others wiped their eyes. But they all listened. The hegemony says we are contaminated, she continued. They say any world that helps us will be destroyed. Many species believe them. Others are too afraid to care. We don't ask for much. Just a place to live. A world with oceans where we can rebuild. A representative from Mars raised his hand. What about Earth? Our oceans are already full of life. We can't just dump 2 million refugees into them. Santos nodded. That's a fair concern. What exactly are you asking for? Cathara had prepared for this question. We ask for one world. Any world with water. We will work for our food. We will share our science and technology. We will serve in your fleets if needed. We ask only for a chance to survive. The chamber fell quiet. Cathara could hear the hum of the station's life support systems. Finally, Santos stood up. The vote is simple, she announced. Do we grant asylum to the Zephyrian people? All in favor? Hands rose across the chamber. On the video screens, representatives from distant worlds raised their hands too. Cathara counted them with growing amazement. It wasn't close. It was unanimous. Santos smiled at her. Ambassador Cathara, on behalf of humanity, welcome to the family. We'll find you a home. Later, as Cathara returned to her ship, she thought about Rodriguez's words. People help people. It seemed humans really believed that. She just hoped they understood what they had signed up for. The hegemony of suns didn't make empty threats. If they protected the Zephyrians, the humans would face the same fury that had destroyed 3 star systems. But when she looked back at the busy, chaotic, wonderfully alive human station, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. The water world of Kepler 438c had been empty for millions of years. Deep oceans covered the entire planet, but there was no life in them. Just cold, dark water under alien stars. 3 months ago, it had been perfect for the Zephyrians. Now it was becoming something more than perfect. It was becoming home. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the floating platform and watched the construction crews work. Humans in environmental suits worked next to Zephyrians in the water below. Giant machines moved through the ocean depths, laying foundations for the new cities. Above the surface, transport ships came and went, like busy insects, bringing supplies from across human space. Chen had been an engineer for 20 years, but she had never seen a project like this. The original plan had been simple: build basic shelters for the refugees, give them the minimum they needed to survive. But humans didn't work that way. Every day, someone had a new idea to make things better. The thermal vents are ready, announced Lieutenant Torres over the radio. The Zephyrians can start planting their coral gardens whenever they want. Chen smiled. The thermal vents had been Torres's idea. The Zephyrians didn't just need warm water to survive. Their culture was built around these underwater gardens. Torres had spent weeks learning about their agricultural methods. Then he had figured out how to create artificial thermal vents that would support their crops. In the water below, Velnash swam up to the platform. He was one of the Zephyrian engineers working on the project. His gill slits fluttered as he spoke through the translation device, floating next to him. Captain Chen, the bioarchitects want to know about the kelp forests. The humans are planting them in patterns. We don't understand why. Chen pulled up the holographic display showing the ocean floor. The kelp would grow in spirals and geometric shapes across hundreds of square kilometers. It's art, she explained. When your people look down from orbit, they'll see beautiful patterns in the water. Velnash was quiet for a moment. His large eyes blinked slowly. Art? You're making art? For us? Why not? Chen said. A home should be beautiful. She watched Velnash swim away to tell the others. The Zephyrians still didn't understand humans completely. They came from a practical culture. Everything had a purpose. Humans did things differently. They believed beauty was a purpose all by itself. Dr. Kim from the atmospheric team called over the platform's speaker system. Sarah, you need to see this. Chen took the elevator down to the underwater observation dome. Dr. Kim was watching the construction of one of the new cities through the transparent aluminum walls. Zephyrian workers swam between the growing coral towers, guiding their construction with gentle touches. "Watch how they build," Kim said quietly. Chen had seen Zephyrian construction before, but she looked more carefully now. The aliens didn't use tools the way humans did. Instead, they sang to their biomaterials. The coral responded to specific sound frequencies, growing faster or slower, thicker or thinner. It was like watching musicians compose a symphony in living stone. "That's incredible," Chen whispered. "It gets better," Kim replied. She activated a recording device. "Listen to this." The underwater microphones picked up the Zephyrian work songs. Chen had heard them before as random noise. Now she realized they were complex harmonies. Dozens of voices blended together in patterns that made the coral dance. "They're not just building cities," Kim explained. "They're creating music that will play forever in the currents. Each building sings a different note. The whole city will be one giant instrument." Chen stared at the growing coral towers with new understanding. The Zephyrians weren't just grateful for human help. They were giving gifts in return. They were building something beautiful for its own sake, just like the humans. Over the next few weeks, the project took on a life of its own. The human construction crews learned basic Zephyrian songs to help with the coral building. The Zephyrians started adding human artistic elements to their cities. Bioluminescent displays that could be seen from space, spiral towers that created interesting shadows in the underwater cities. Engineer Marcus Webb arrived from Earth with a special cargo ship. He was Admiral Webb's younger brother, but he had chosen building over fighting. His ship carried something unusual: Earth fish. "Salmon," he explained to the gathered Zephyrians. "They're from Earth's oceans. We thought your children might like to chase them through the kelp forests." The Zephyrian youngsters had been struggling since the plague. They had lost their playmates and their games. But when the salmon were released into the new kelp forests, something magical happened. The young Zephyrians rediscovered joy. Chen watched them dart between the kelp fronds, their sleek bodies flashing silver in the artificial sunlight. Their parents sang happy songs that made the coral cities glow brighter. "Why do you do so much for us?" Velnash asked one day. They were working together to install the atmospheric processors that would create the aurora displays the Zephyrians had lost with their homeworlds. Chen looked up at the gray sky. Soon it would dance with green and blue lights, just like the skies of the dead Zephyrian worlds. "Because surviving isn't living," she said. "Everyone deserves a home they can love." As the months passed, the project grew beyond anyone's original plans. What started as refugee camps became cities. What started as basic shelter became art. Scientists from both species worked together, sharing knowledge that had taken centuries to develop. The Zephyrians taught humans about bioengineering and sustainable ocean farming. The humans shared their knowledge of energy systems and space travel. Together, they created something neither species could have built alone. Chen stood on the platform one last time before her ship left for Earth. The first city was complete now. Coral towers rose from the ocean floor like frozen songs. Kelp forests swayed in mathematical patterns that could be seen from orbit. Aurora lights danced across the sky in colors that honored the memory of dead worlds. In the water below, Zephyrian children chased Earth salmon, while their parents tended gardens of coral and song. It wasn't just a refugee settlement anymore. It was something beautiful and alive and worth protecting. Chen smiled as her transport ship pulled away from the water world. The humans had been asked for shelter. Instead, they had built a home. Now, they would have to protect it. The Hegemony probe ship appeared at the edge of the Kepler 438 system like a blade cutting through space. Its hull was black metal, covered in sharp angles that seemed to hurt the eyes just to look at them. No running lights marked its position. No identification signals announced its presence. It simply hung in space, like a piece of the void itself. Admiral Marcus Webb received the alert at 0347 ship time aboard his flagship, the Indomitable. He had been expecting this for months. The hegemony of suns did not make idle threats, and they did not forget insults. Giving shelter to the Zephyrians had been both. "Signal from the probe ship, Admiral," reported Communications Officer Park. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies." "Put it on screen." The main display flickered to life. The being that appeared was like nothing Webb had seen before. It looked like it was made of living crystal, all sharp edges and cold light. When it spoke, its voice sounded like breaking glass. "I am Overseer Crixtall of the Hegemony of Suns. We demand the immediate surrender of all contaminated Zephyrian biologicals. You have 72 hours to comply." Webb leaned back in his command chair. Around the bridge, his crew worked quietly at their stations. They had trained for this moment. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Channel open, sir." Webb stood up. When he spoke, his voice was calm and steady. "This is Admiral Marcus Webb, commanding officer of the Sol Defense Fleet. The Zephyrian people are under Earth's protection. We will not surrender them to you or anyone else." The crystal being tilted its head. Light refracted through its body in strange patterns. "Admiral Webb, you clearly don't understand the situation. The Zephyrian biological units are contaminated with synthetic plague material. They represent a threat to galactic biosecurity." "That's a lie, and you know it," Webb replied. "Our medical teams have examined every Zephyrian refugee. The plague is dead. Your people made sure of that when they poisoned 3 star systems." Crixtall made a sound like wind chimes in a storm. Webb realized it was laughing. "You think this is about disease? The Zephyrians refuse to submit to hegemony authority. Their punishment is extinction. Any species that interferes with that punishment will face correction." The display showed tactical information streaming in from scout ships. The probe was alone, but that wouldn't last long. Webb had read every report about hegemony military tactics. They sent probes first to study their targets. Then came the fleets. "I see," Webb said quietly. "In that case, let me make something clear to you, Overseer. The Zephyrians are under our protection. Period. Any hostile action against them will be met with appropriate force." The crystal being leaned forward, its body reflecting the bridge lights in cold flashes. "Appropriate force? Admiral, do you know what the hegemony of suns is? We control 73 star systems. Our fleets have broken civilizations that spanned 100 worlds. Your little human alliance has what? 50 systems? Maybe 100 ships? 4 though." Webb smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "Then, you've never met humans before. I suggest you leave while you still can." Crixtall's laughter was like a crystal chandelier falling downstairs. "We will return in 1 standard week with a correction fleet. Surrender the contaminated biologicals, or your species will join them in extinction." The transmission ended. The probe ship hung in space for another hour, running deep scans of human defenses. Then it vanished into hyperspace, leaving only the cold stars behind. Webb's executive officer, Commander Liu, approached his chair. "Orders? Admiral? Signal all fleet units. Prepare for company." Webb turned to the communications station. "And get me a secure channel to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. Webb not amender 4. Webb turn 9 quederdid 1. Webb turn 9 quederdid 1. I mad a case. Quederdid 1. The conversation with Earth Command lasted 6 hours. Webb explained the situation to Secretary General Santos and the Defense Council. Some voices argued for negotiation. Others suggested relocating the Zephyrians to a more distant world. Webb listened to them all with growing impatience. Finally, Santos called for quiet. "Admiral Webb, what's your assessment?" The hegemony isn't interested in negotiation, Webb replied. This is about power. They can't allow anyone to defy them and survive. If we back down now, we'll just face them again later, when we're weaker. And if we fight? Webb looked out at the stars beyond the viewport. Somewhere out there, Zephyrian children were playing in kelp forests, planted by human hands. Then we show the galaxy what it means to threaten people under our protection. The vote was closer than the refugee decision had been, but it still passed. Earth would stand with the Zephyrians. Webb was authorized to use any force necessary to defend them. Over the next few days, the Sol Defense Fleet prepared for war. Ships arrived from across human space. The carrier groups from Alpha Centauri and Wolf 359. The heavy cruisers from the Tau Ceti shipyards. The destroyer squadrons from New Terra and Harmony Station. But Webb had more than just human ships. Over the past 2 centuries, humanity had made alliances with dozens of species. Most were small powers, nothing like the great galactic empires. But they remembered human kindness and human protection. When the call went out, they answered. The Altarian defense wings arrived first. Their sleek fighters could dance through asteroid fields without touching a single rock. The vegan heavy transports came next, carrying support equipment and medical supplies. The Procyon merchant marines brought their converted cargo ships, armed with mining lasers and stubborn crews. Even more surprising were the Zephyrians themselves. Their bioships had been thought destroyed in the plague, but they had been rebuilding in secret. Ships grown from coral and bone, powered by living engines, piloted by survivors who had lost everything to hegemony, cruelty. Ambassador Keth Ara came aboard the Indomitable to meet with Webb personally. She swam in a zero-gravity tank that had been installed in the conference room specially for her. Admiral Webb, she said through her translator, my people have decided to fight alongside yours. Ambassador, you don't have to do this. We gave you our protection. That means we handle the fighting. Her gill slits fluttered in what Webb had learned was the Zephyrian equivalent of a sad smile. Admiral, you have given us more than protection. You have given us hope. You have given us home. Now let us give you something in return. Webb nodded slowly. What do you need from us? Access to your military databases. Our bioships can adapt, but they need to know what they're adapting to. Webb made the decision without checking with Earth Command. The Zephyrians had earned the right to fight for their home. Done. Anything else? Done. Yes, Keth Ara said quietly. When the hegemony arrives, they will expect you to be afraid. They will expect you to negotiate or surrender. Show them that humans don't work that way. Webb looked out at the growing fleet assembling around Kepler 438c. Human ships worked alongside alien designs. Fighter squadrons practiced maneuvers between bioships that moved like living things. Marines trained with Zephyrian warriors in the zero-gravity chambers. Don't worry, Ambassador, he said finally. We'll show them exactly how humans work. In space above the water world, the fleet waited. The hegemony was coming with their correction fleet and their demands for surrender. But they were about to learn something about humans that the galaxy had never seen before. When people threaten human friends, humans don't negotiate. They fight, and they fight to win. The hegemony fleet dropped out of hyperspace with the confidence of 1,000 victories. 200 warships materialized at the edge of the Kepler 438 system in perfect formation. Massive dreadnoughts the size of cities led the way. Battle cruisers and destroyers flanked them like sharks following a whale. Fighter carriers hung back, ready to release clouds of deadly interceptors. Overseer Crixtal stood on the bridge of the flagship Domination, watching the tactical displays with satisfaction. The humans had 63 ships defending the water world. Small vessels mostly, with a few larger cruisers mixed in. It would be a short fight. Signal the human fleet, Crixtal ordered. Give them one final chance to surrender. The communications officer, an insectoid being from one of the client species, activated the transmitter. Channel open, Overseer. Admiral Webb. Crixtal's voice rang across space. You have seen our fleet. 200 ships against your pathetic 63. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick. Admiral Webb's reply came back immediately. Overseer Crixtal, this is your final warning. Leave this system now or face the consequences. Crixtal's crystalline body flashed with angry light. The audacity of these mammals was beyond belief. Admiral, you cannot possibly win this fight. Surrender and save your crews from pointless death. There was a pause. Then Webb spoke again, and something in his voice made Crixtal listen more carefully. Overseer, you made one mistake. You counted our ships. What do you mean? You should have counted our friends. The space around the hegemony fleet suddenly filled with light. Hyperspace windows opened in every direction. Ships poured through like water through a broken dam. Not 63 ships. Not 200 ships. More ships than Crixtal had ever seen in one place. The Sol Defense Fleet had called in every favor humanity had earned in 2 centuries of space travel. Alliance partners from dozens of worlds answered the call. The Centauri Federation sent their entire battle fleet. The free colonies of Vega deployed every armed ship they had. The Altarian Republic committed their legendary fighter wings. But more than that, the humans had been busy. Hidden shipyards and asteroid belts and dead systems had been working for decades. Humanity had learned the lesson of the hegemony's power. Never again would humans face a threat unprepared. Massive dreadnoughts bearing Earth's eagle emblem powered up their weapons. Heavy cruisers from Mars and Europa moved into attack formation. Destroyer squadrons from the outer colonies spread out like a net. Fighter carriers launched clouds of interceptors that blotted out the stars. Impossible, Crixtal whispered. The tactical displays showed over 800 ships now surrounding the hegemony fleet. Where did they all come from? Commander Vel Hash, Crixtal's military advisor, studied the sensor readings with growing alarm. Overseer, these aren't just human ships. I'm reading signatures from at least 20 different species. And some of these designs, I've never seen anything like them. The bioships launched from the water world below caught everyone's attention. They moved like living things, because they were living things. Coral hulls that could repair themselves in battle. Bone armor that grew stronger under stress. Living weapons that learned and adapted with each shot fired. Those are Zephyrian vessels, Velhash reported. But they're enhanced with human technology. Overseer, I don't think this is the same refugee fleet that left their homeworld. Crixtal watched the bioships dance through space with impossible grace. They moved like schools of fish, coordinating without apparent communication. Signal all ships. Battle formation. We'll break through their center and destroy the planet. The battle began with the scream of energy weapons and the flash of exploding missiles. The hegemony ships were individually more powerful than most of their opponents. Their weapons could crack planets and their shields could stop small moons. But they had never faced anything like this. Human tactics were different from anything in the hegemony's experience. Their ships worked together like a single organism. Destroyers would swarm a hegemony dreadnought, while cruisers provided covering fire. Fighters would dive into the enemy formation like angry wasps, striking at weak points and vanishing before the heavy guns could respond. The alien allies brought their own surprises. Altarian fighters moved with impossible precision, threading through the chaos of battle like needles through cloth. Vegan heavy ships deployed gravitic mines that pulled enemy vessels out of formation. The small powers that the hegemony had ignored for centuries proved they had sharp teeth when pushed. But the real shock was the bioships. They fought with desperate fury and impossible skill. Their living hulls absorbed energy, weapon strikes, and converted the power to heal damage. Their bone weapons fired projectiles that sought out targets like hunting animals. When they died, they released clouds of smaller organisms that attacked nearby enemy ships. Captain Elena Vasquez led Fighter Squadron 12 through the heart of the battle. Her ship, the Stingray, danced between laser blasts and missile explosions as she hunted for targets. Her squadron had been assigned to protect the bioships, but she was learning they could take care of themselves. "Holy hell," her wingman called over the radio. "Did you see that? That bioship just ate a hegemony destroyer." Vasquez looked where he was pointing. A massive Zephyrian vessel had wrapped itself around an enemy ship like a sea monster from ancient legends. Bone spikes punched through the metal hull, while acidic fluids dissolved the armor plating. It was horrifying and beautiful at the same time. "Stay focused," she ordered her squadron. "Let's give our friends some cover." The battle raged for 18 hours. Ships died on both sides, their hulks tumbling through space like broken toys. The hegemony fleet was stronger, but the Allied fleet was larger and more determined. Every human ship that fell was avenged by two others. Every alien ally that died was mourned and remembered. Slowly, inevitably, the hegemony fleet began to break apart. Their perfect formation collapsed under the weight of coordinated attacks. Ships that had conquered 100 worlds found themselves surrounded and outgunned by vessels they had never considered threats. Overseer Krixtal watched the destruction from the bridge of the domination. Half his fleet was gone. The other half was scattered and demoralized. The humans had done something that hadn't been done in 500 years. They had broken a hegemony battle fleet. "Overseer," Velhash reported quietly, "the flagship's shields are failing. Weapons are down. Engine power is at 30%. I recommend we withdraw." Krixtal looked at the tactical display one final time. Human and allied ships moved through the wreckage like hunters finishing wounded prey. The water world below still spun peacefully in its orbit, protected by its guardians. "Signal the fleet," he ordered finally. "General retreat." The surviving hegemony ships fled into hyperspace, leaving behind their dead and their pride. The great fleet that had expected easy victory limped home with tales of impossible defeat. In the space around Kepler 438c, the Allied fleet began search and rescue operations. Human medical ships worked alongside Zephyrian biohealers to save the wounded. Salvage crews collected the debris of battle, while honor guards prepared the dead for burial. Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the aftermath of humanity's greatest space battle. His ship bore the scars of combat, but she was still flying. Around him, the mixed fleet that had won this impossible victory began the slow work of cleaning up. "Admiral," Commander Liu reported, "final casualty reports are coming in. We lost 47 ships total. The hegemony lost 138. Webb nodded slowly. Every loss was a tragedy, but the victory was complete. The hegemony had learned something today about humans and their friends. When people threatened those under human protection, humans didn't just fight back. They called their friends and fought together. The galaxy was about to learn a new lesson about Earth. Humans kept their promises, and they had the fleets to back them up. 1 year after the Great Battle, Ambassador Kethara swam through the completed reef cities of New Tidal with a sense of wonder that still surprised her. The coral towers sang their eternal songs as currents carried the music through underwater valleys filled with earth, salmon, and Zephyrian kelp gardens. Above her head, the aurora lights danced across alien skies in patterns that honored the memory of her dead homeworld. Young Zephyrians raced through the kelp forests, their sleek bodies flashing silver as they chased schools of fish brought from distant Earth. Their laughter created bubbles that rose to the surface like tiny stars. These children had been born after the plague, after the exile, after the desperate flight through empty space. To them, New Tidal wasn't a refugee settlement. It was simply home. Kethara paused at one of the memorial gardens. Coral sculptures grew here in shapes that spelled out the names of the dead worlds. Thousands of names carved in living stone. But alongside the memorials grew new coral, bright with hope and decorated with human artistic touches. The past was honored, but the future was being built every day. "Ambassador," called a familiar voice through her translator. Captain Sarah Chen approached in her submersible suit, moving carefully through the water with the awkward grace of a land creature adapted to the sea. The orbital platform wants to see you. Something about the trial. The trial. For the past 6 months, it had been the most watched legal proceeding in galactic history. Overseer Kriegstall sat in a human detention facility, facing charges of genocide and crimes against sentient beings. The broadcasts reached every corner of known space, setting precedents that would shape interstellar law for generations. Kethara and Chen rose to the surface together, breaking through into the artificial atmosphere that had been created above New Title's oceans. The orbital platform floated overhead like a small moon, its lights reflecting off the water in patterns that spelled out messages of welcome in dozens of languages. On the platform, Secretary General Santos waited with the latest reports from the trial. She was older now. Her gray hair turned white by the stress of managing humanity's first interstellar war. But her eyes were still bright with the determination that had convinced Earth to take in the Zephyrian refugees. The verdict came in this morning, Santos announced. Guilty on all charges. The tribunal sentenced Kriegstall to life imprisonment on Titan. No parole, no appeals. Kethara felt a complex mix of emotions. Justice was important, but it couldn't bring back the billions who had died in the plague. What about the rest of the hegemony? Quote, "That's the interesting part," Santos replied, activating a holographic display that showed the current state of galactic politics. They're falling apart. 12 species have declared independence in the past month. 3 more are in open rebellion. It turns out that when you build an empire on fear, losing one big battle can bring the whole thing down. The map showed red zones of conflict spreading through what had once been hegemony space. Worlds that had been conquered centuries ago were remembering what freedom felt like. Client species that had served the crystal overlords were finding their courage. The Altarians are leading a coalition of the former client species, Chen added. They're calling it the Free Worlds Alliance. Guess who they want as their primary ally? Kethara looked at the 2 humans with growing understanding. Earth. Santos nodded. Humanity went from being a regional power to the leader of the largest military alliance in the galaxy. All because we decided to help some refugees. But the real changes went deeper than politics. In the research stations that orbited New Title, human and Zephyrian scientists worked side by side on projects that would have been impossible for either species alone. Zephyrian bioengineering merged with human technology to create new forms of medicine and agriculture. Human space travel techniques, combined with Zephyrian organic ship designs, to produce vessels that were part machine, part living creature. The Tide Guard patrolled the shipping lanes between human and allied worlds. These mixed crews of humans, Zephyrians, and other species had become legendary throughout the galaxy. Pirates and raiders learned to fear the sight of ships that moved like living things and fought with the determination of beings protecting their family. In the deeper parts of New Tidal, where the pressure would crush most life forms, human and Zephyrian engineers worked on the most ambitious project yet. They were building seed ships, vessels that could carry life to dead worlds and create new oceans where none had existed before. The Zephyrians would never again depend on a single world for survival. Kethara toured one of these seed ships with engineer Marcus Webb, Admiral Webb's brother who had brought the salmon to New Tidal. The vessel was a marvel of bioengineering and human technology. Living coral could survive in space for decades, waiting for the right world to wake up and begin growing. We're planning 20 ships to start, Marcus explained as they walked through the ship's living corridors. Each one can terraform a water world in about 50 years. The Zephyrians will have dozens of worlds to choose from. And the humans? Kethara asked. What do you get from this? Marcus smiled. Partners. Friends. The knowledge that we did the right thing. He paused at a viewing port that looked out at the busy construction yards. Also the satisfaction of knowing that the next time someone threatens our friends, they'll face a lot more than just Earth. The celebration that evening brought together beings from across the galaxy. The memorial hall of new title, filled with humans and Zephyrians, but also Altarians and vegans, and dozens of other species. They came to mark the anniversary of the battle that had changed everything. Admiral Webb gave the main address. He stood before a mixed audience of military officers and civilians, his uniform bearing new decorations that honored not just human service, but alliance cooperation. 1 year ago, we faced a choice, he said, his voice carrying easily through the translator systems. We could have given up. We could have negotiated. We could have tried to find a compromise that would have satisfied everyone. Instead, we chose to stand with our friends. The audience listened with the quiet attention of people who had lived through history. The hegemony thought we would be easy targets because we weren't a great military power. They thought our alliances were weak because our allies were small. They forgot something important about humans. We don't measure friends by their size. We measure them by their worth. Applause echoed through the hall, but Webb raised a hand for quiet. Today, the Free Worlds Alliance includes 47 species across 200 star systems. We have the largest fleet in galactic history. Our combined technology is advancing faster than any single species could manage alone. But none of that matters as much as this simple fact. We kept our word. We none. After the ceremony, Kethara found herself alone with Captain Chen on the observation deck. Below them, the lights of new title created patterns in the dark water. Above them, the stars shone with the promise of new worlds waiting to be born. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had never met humans? Kethara asked. Chen considered the question. You would have found another species to help you. Good people exist throughout the galaxy. You just happened to find us first. No, Kethara said quietly. I think it had to be humans. Only humans would have built us a home, instead of just giving us shelter. Only humans would have protected it with warships when the old powers came calling. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the aurora lights dance across the alien sky. In the distance, patrol ships moved between the stars like guardian angels, keeping watch over the worlds where different species had learned to call each other family. The galaxy had learned something new about humanity. When humans made a promise, they kept it. When they offered protection, they meant it. And when someone threatened those under their care, humans didn't just fight back. They made sure the threat never came back. In the deep currents of new title, children of two species played together under stars that no longer seemed cold and distant. They were home now, protected by creatures who had learned that the best way to honor the gift of life was to defend it for others. The story of Earth's promise would spread to every world in known space. Some species would mock it as naive idealism. Others would request their own alliances with these strange humans who built homes for refugees and defended them with fleets of warships. But in the schools of new title, young Zephyrians learned the human phrase that Captain Rodriguez had spoken so long ago. People help people. It was a simple idea that had changed the galaxy forever. And it was just the beginning.